Hey, Mystic Michaela spiritual family. Welcome to Know Your Aura with Mystic Michaela. Today, we are talking about shadow people. Do you know what that is? Well, over on the Mystic Michaela Spiritual Family Facebook page, there was some chatter, and some people were talking about seeing something called shadow people. And I was floored. I had no idea that this was something that other people knew about. It was something that I had experiences with growing up myself, which I'm going to talk about. But first, I wanted to hear, what are shadow people? How did this term come to be? And how is it such a phenomenon? And maybe you have experiences with it too. You just didn't know what to call it before. So, hey, Scotty.
Hey, guys. Yes, I've heard you use this term before.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really looked into it too much. I thought at that time you were just talking about ghosts.
Right.
I want to start off by saying we're not talking about ghosts here.
Right.
We're talking about shadow people. All right. So I had to research it for myself. And, I went online, looked up some sources, read some stories, got the history of it. We also asked the Mystic Michaela Spiritual Family members, and I was actually floored by how many people responded to the post that I put up.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
There's over 100, I don't know how many comments. When I last looked, there was 100 comments.
Yeah.
I could not believe that so many people have had experiences with what we'll call shadow people.
Really credible and similar sounding experiences.
Yes, very similar.
Yeah.
And the weirdest part is it matches the research that I did.
Okay.
All right. So for those of you that don't know, what are shadow people? All right. So basically it's the perception of a shadow as a living space or human figure.
Okay.
That's the definition. Now, usually it's seen in the periphery of the vision. So it's not straight on through the side. And again, when the people on the page were saying this, most of them were saying that they saw it corner of the eye.
Corner of the eye.
Right, corner of the eye. There's a lot of debate on what it is. I think you're going to go into that a little bit more later on, what you think it is. But, some people claim you're just seeing ghosts.
Right.
Some people claim it's just a negative energy source. Some people believe it's alien beings.
Okay.
So there's a lot of debate over what it is.
Right.
Some things that are very common it's a very unsettling feeling.
Right.
That this is what I'm gathering. Not the same as when you see a ghost. I guess when you see a ghost, you kind of get spooked.
Like, whoa, and,
maybe you get on edge. But this is more of a unsettling feeling. Does that make sense?
Yes, like observing, watching.
Yeah, like, yes.
Yes,
let's call it, the humanoid figure is watching you, staring at you, and it gives you a very, you're creeped out.
Yeah.
Real creeped out. Unlike, maybe you are with a ghost too, but I think it's a different experience.
Different than like a dead person. Right.
Most of the time, there's no defining features other than it being a man. There's very little claim that it's a female. Most people say it's a man. And they just kind of see it as like a dark void, but it's a man. But you couldn't make out the features. Like you wouldn't be able to check out their arm, like define characteristics of their arms and their body.
Presence.
Right. It's not, usually it's unclothed. Obviously they've been listening to the podcast and playing Jumanji. Just kidding. But sometimes people see the figure with a hat on.
Right. Hat man.
And they call that hat man. It's a fedora. We would see it mostly with a fedora. And so they call that hat man.
Right.
So I guess hat man would be one of the shadow people. But so I had to look into it. Where does this come about in history? And this is not a complete history of it, but you can definitely find examples of it, and then you could see if this would apply to the Hat Man.
Okay.
All right. Or the shadow people. All right. So going back, this is Native American culture. This is the Cherokee. The Raven Mocker is what they would have called it. And this is basically an evil spirit. It's the most feared spirit among the Cherokee. And it comes to the sick and the dying.
Oh.
So when people are maybe on their deathbed or, their time is short, the Raven Mocker will come in, and basically it will kind of watch you, kind of like the shadow people, and then eventually it will jump onto you, and it will kill you and take your heart.
I think it's associated with a lot of sleep paralysis too.
Correct.
These shadow people.
They are. Yeah, especially the Hat Man sightings.
Okay.
But there is also cases where the Hat Man or the shadow people will go onto you.
Yeah.
There are accounts of that.
Right.
So now how does this also tie in. Basically, it's like they will have an appearance of a man, or it could be a woman in the Cherokee lore too, and it can only be seen by like the medicine man of the time. Maybe Aaron Rodgers could see it. I don't know, but you had to be like a medicine man.
Okay.
But anyway, and then it'll kill you, take your heart,
right?
go on a darkness retreat. No, it'll fly off as a raven. That's where it gets the term, the raven mocker. So if you hear this sound coming, you know that death is coming to the village or whatever.
Like the flapping of wings or something?
Yeah, the sound of the raven mocker.
Oh,
the sound of the raven mocker. So,
all right.
But again, this idea that it's like kind of lurking in the shadows.
Yeah, it's interesting in other culture. You know, it's always interesting with these things when you research and we see that these phenomena come across in other cultures at other times with different names, but very similar feelings and descriptions.
Correct. Right. There's obviously differences, but we're still on that
same page.
The same page, exactly. Yeah. Another example would be the Nalusa in the Native American tribe of the Choctaw. That Nalusa refers to long black being. Oh. Again.
Ooh, so I got chills.
Like a shadowy, and this would be like a shadowy creature that lives in the dense parts of the forest. That's where they lived in the southern portion of the United States. So they would have been forested at that time. That's why that would have came about. And there's many different accounts, depending on who you ask, size, shape. Usually, some people say it's 8 feet tall. Some people will say shorter. And when this first came about, the legend was that two boys were being bad in the village. They sent them off into the forest. Yeah. And then they encountered.
That reminds me of that Slender Man stuff.
Yeah.
Actually. Yeah. Like long being with the long limbs and the.
Right. Yeah. The Nalusa. They encountered the Nalusa, and it was there to teach them a lesson. Oh, wow. Of how to behave in the village.
Yeah. That would make you be good.
Yes. That would be. And then there's other accounts, and that story and legend has grown that the Nalusa will find you in the deep, darkest parts of the forest, and then he will basically like prick you with a thorn. Okay. You won't know it, and that will produce evil in you. Oh, okay. So like you'll start doing evil acts because you've been pricked by the Nalusa. Which is interesting also because the shadow people and the Hat Man is usually associated with evil. It's usually negative energy. I cannot find an account of positivity with these shadow people. Yeah. Where a ghost, you can possibly find an account of positivity. Yeah. No, they just haven't crossed over. Right. But here you do not find any accounts of positivity with the Hat Man.
It's kind of like a portal to evil. Yes. Or a portal to something not good. Right. Or negative, right?
Yeah, and then you could also find it in Islamic culture too. The jinn, which is we think of genies, right? Yes. And all that. The jinn are like shapeshifters. They're unseen. They inhabit the earth, but you really can't see them. Okay. Sometimes they make themselves known. You can find this in stories of the Quran and a lot of Islamic literature. And they could take any type of form. They could be in the air. They can be fire, human form, animal form. And again, sometimes they will come into contact with humans, and that would kind of lend itself to that flick of what I saw that at the corner of my eye. Yeah. What was that? Maybe you have seen the jinn. Okay. They're saying too. So that and again, you can go further into this. You can go to many different cultures, find many different. I just picked 3. Yeah.
That's interesting though. It exists.
It exists
in a lot of different places.
Yes. Okay. Right. And then let me fast forward to the 2000s, late 1990s. Yeah. Okay. So the recent history of this, there was a guy named Art Bell. He passed away in 2018. He was born in 1945. He was an American broadcaster, and he was the host of a show called Coast to Coast AM. Okay. Still exists today, believe it or not. The show is still on the air. He was the host from 1988 to 2003, and it was a paranormal themed show. Okay. And I think it broadcast from midnight to 4 a.m. or something like that. So you spent your nights, and people would call in with their stories. I'm sure they had some Mothman call-ins and UFOs and all these type of things. And, obviously he was criticized for being pseudoscience and, making it into a show rather than the actual scientific data. But on one of his episodes, he recounts the story of how he saw a shadow person. Oh. And he was, it was late night. He was at his desk, and I think he said he was on his computer or he was working on something, and he saw this shadow person and he freaked out. And you can actually hear the recording
Oh, you can
go to
still
YouTube.
listen to the broadcast?
Yep, you can still listen to that part of the broadcast. I listened to it. And, I mean, it seems like he's
believable.
He's believable.
Right.
He's got a good radio voice, too. And, so he seems believable. And then ever since then, he had on a lot of guests that would talk about these shadow people.
They all saw it, too.
Yeah, and... they went in, Hat Man came about at this time.
Okay.
So you wouldn't, like, if you were living in 1990, you wouldn't know what a Hat Man is.
Yeah.
You would never heard the term.
Yeah.
You might have seen the Hat Man.
Right.
But you wouldn't have a term to it. But basically, the consensus is that it is an evil being, negative entity, possibly aliens. That's the
and that really sensationalized it.
Yes.
At that time. And kind of gave it new language.
Yeah, this radio... And you might be saying, well, what's this Coast to Coast AM?
Yeah.
Now, no, nobody's listening to that now.
Right.
Or maybe there are a few people listening to it. But at that time, in the early 1990s, it had millions and millions of listeners.
So it's like a viral...
It could
at that time, that would be like considered what today we call viral. Like it was kind of like one of those shows.
It could have just been a... Yes. Yeah, it could have been... It would have had a lot more play than today. If and like I said, it's still going on today. I never heard of it, but... and then this Hat Man comes on, and then you were saying something about sleep paralysis, and that's where they feel the Hat Man comes into play.
That's interesting with the hat, because people see a hat, but sometimes you see what you're culturally conditioned to see. Sometimes it's like, well, that looks like a hat. But like 500 years ago, what did somebody say that would look like? I mean, I don't know,
Right.
like maybe it's not a hat. Maybe like it's interesting with the raven. What's that called?
Raven
again?
mocker?
The raven mocker.
Yeah.
Because maybe you would have thought it was something like a bird head or something, you know what I mean? But like the hat is interesting. And so you're saying the Hat Man's associated with sleep paralysis?
Right. With that, that kind of when you're walking the line.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, there was a lot of films based, when you're like the Nightmare on Elm Street comes out, or those type of movies based off that kind of thing, when you're,
right.
I think there's like The Sandman or whatever, those kind of movies, but where you're in between state.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was looking at this from a more logical point of view, and you're going to tell your stories in a few moments, and then we got the stories from the family. What would I say? Okay, well, maybe you're seeing something out of the corner of your eye. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you're in that state of exhaustion. It's 2 a.m. You wake up for a second. You thought you saw something. I mean, I could go that route with this.
Sure.
But I don't know. I think there's something
to it.
Something to it. Because everyone's kind of saying the same exact thing.
Yeah.
With very, very similar accounts on the page.
Yes.
Which is making me a little bit of a believer.
You always believe our people.
Yeah. Because when I looked into the radio show, and I thought, oh, they're sensationalizing things. This guy's making this up for a good episode, But now, I don't know. I'm in between. So we'll definitely, jury's out still.
All right. So I'm going to tell my experience coming up right after this. Best day is Stitch Fix Day. I get that box in the mail, and out of that box comes 5 incredible new pieces I can add to my wardrobe that my stylist has helped me choose and take my wardrobe to the next level. That confidence boost you get when you put on a really amazing outfit. That's what I get from Stitch Fix. When I look good, I feel good. It shows. I can be more myself. Stitch Fix makes it so easy. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I mean, the more detailed, the better, really. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And she sends 5 just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and pro styling tips. I keep what I love and I send back the rest. It's just that easy. And anytime you don't love something, you just send it back. Shipping, returns, exchanges, always free. It is style that makes you feel as good as you look. Get started today at stitchfix.com/KYA. That's stitchfix.com/KYA. stitchfix.com/KYA. Hey, Scotty.
Hey, guys.
All right, so let me tell you my experience about shadow people. And this is actually kind of difficult for me to talk about because I've conditioned myself to forget it and ignore it because it was such a negative experience for me. And that was one of my coping mechanisms actually in dealing with it. So I've talked about this before, but growing up, we lived in a very haunted house. There were a lot of different entities in it. And honestly, the main one was a good one. It was a woman who haunted the house, and we all had experiences with her. But there were also, and this was the first time I can recall the shadow people experience. I was probably 4th grade at the time. We lived in a very old house. This house was over like 100 years old. It was very old. I shared a wall with the attic. The house was old, so there were a lot of holes like between there was no baseboard so much, so like there were holes and whatnot. And there was no windows in the attic, but a lot of light would come through and shadows and stuff. And yes, you could say, oh, she was only in 4th grade, this or that. Well, things would crawl up my wall, shadow figures. I remember being perfectly awake and seeing this, and I would put stuffed animals around there, like to block out where I felt at the time they were coming from. So I was terrified. I hated that wall. I hated my room. I hated everything about it. I was raised Catholic. Put up, the way you dealt with this was, all right, put rosaries up and ignore it. My little sister, would talk about the shadow people like they were just people, like real, the shadow people came in. The shadow people. Yeah, all the time. To this day, she sees them. I remember growing up, and it was just something like, oh, the shadow people, you ignore them, don't pay attention to them. We weren't told they weren't real. We were told, yeah, ignore and do not speak of them. And, put up the rosaries, put up the Mary statues, all that around so that it kind of made them go away.
Okay. Now, did your parents see these shadow people as well?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay,
I think it was more my sister and
I. They never acknowledged we seen them too.
But they didn't say they weren't real.
But they didn't say they didn't.
The house was so haunted that there was so much going on in that house that it was just one more thing. Did
you and your sister compare notes?
Not really.
Like, what do they look like? Or anything like that?
Well, my sister would say, they were shadows.
Okay.
But they were moving around. The way I saw them...
were they formless?
Yeah. So the way I saw them, I remember, is they would just kind of like go up the wall. And I didn't have as much experience with it as my sister did. Because I'll tell you, I think my problem is with being a kid and being psychic is I learned really early on what to shut out and what not to shut out. And that was one of the things where I knew it wasn't like the lady haunting the house. Like, it was different. It was mean and evil, and it wasn't right. And it was something that close your eyes, ignore it, say a Hail Mary, and it'll go away. Like, I was so terrified of it. And also it just it felt cold and incorrect that and to this day, I'm really good with blocking out negative entities. A lot of people who go into the line of work that I'm in have problems with attracting evil. I really don't. I am very good at ignoring it because it feeds on your attention. So that's why it's weird. You might even pick up my hesitancy to speak about it, because the more you talk about it, the more comfortable it is to come find you. That's the other thing. In my own experience. So it's just something I learned very early on, like shut out and ignore. But I would put things against the wall because I felt like that helped. I had like a whole I went to Catholic school, so I had like a whole Catholic shrine going in my room about it, almost to the point, like, I think if a therapist came in and saw my room at that age, they'd be like, is she like, okay, like there's some religious compulsion going on, or OCD tendencies with religious stuff, because that's how stressed out I was in that house about it. And when we moved, it was such a relief, honestly, to be away from all that energy. And looking back, I see how much it taxed me and stressed me. And I remember sleeping over, because I had my best friend lived behind me at another, and I would sleep at her house. And I remember being like, oh, it's so clean here, meaning energetically, like there's nothing here. This is so nice. It's so nice. And I would always sleep with all my windows wide open. Like, I would try to always have night light on, like everything on. And just, I didn't want any opportunity for shadows even to be in the room. But they were formless. They were kind of like formless with, if you were going to draw them, it was kind of like a bald head and then like a formless body. But definitely they feel like sentient beings, but aren't human. That's what it feels like to me. So,
okay. And you were sure that these were not ghosts. These were different.
Yeah, because I saw the ghost. Like, I read dead people all the time.
Right.
I say that all the time. Like, dead people are great. They're just people. Like, they don't. I saw the dead woman who lived in the house. Like, she appeared to me. I saw her. She looked like a person. These don't look like people. They're 2-dimensional. First of all, they're 2-dimensional and they're dark, and they do look like a shadow. So,
yeah,
and they're fuzzy.
I mean,
but my sister had a ton of experiences with them. Yeah. Like, she would say things like they tucked me in at night.
Wow.
They looked into my bed. They're playing. They moved her toys around, things like that. Like, she would scream. She had like terrible negative experiences with them. I feel like they were messing with her. Honestly,
do you remember the age? How old?
We're 6 years apart. So, I'm 4th grade. So what am I? 9, 10. So she'd be like 4.
Okay.
But to this day, she still sees them. Like, she'll see them in not just that house, all over, like my parents' house. I wonder, because my mom doing the work that she did, I don't know if it's attracted to that or whatnot. I don't see them here, and I do this work at our house. But like, I feel like, I don't know if that had something to do with it, or it was the house itself. When we moved, we did not have that experience. But in the house they're in now, my sister says she sees them sometimes. And they lurk. They lurk,
yeah.
And they wait for opportunity. That's the other thing. They wait for opportunity. Why? I feel like it's really hard for me to talk about them because I'm so good at shutting them out. And I was so terrified as a child by them. It's like almost a traumatic experience, honestly. That I feel like I always felt like they were trying to take you, like take me or something.
Like, not physical you, like your mind?
I don't know.
Like take you.
I got to go back to 4th grade Megan. And my mindset then was like, they're trying to take me away.
Okay.
Like that. So I was very scared of them. And it did feel like a portal because I shared a wall with that room, the attic room. And there was no windows in there. And light and shadow would always pop in. And there was nothing going on in that room. And it would always come in through the holes in the wall. And
whoa.
All the time. Like, it was weird. And like, people would be like, oh, it sounds like headlights or something going by. Like, there's no windows back there. It was a completely sealed off room with nothing. Why is there light coming through all the time? You know?
Yeah.
Hello, podcast fans. If you're looking for a new podcast, if you enjoy articles, books, pop culture, and hilarity, try listening to the Brain Candy Podcast.
That's right. The Brain Candy Podcast has over 500 episodes of educational hilarity to satiate your learning needs. Just search for the Brain Candy Podcast on your podcast app or click the link in the show notes.
I mean, the question is, did every kid have this? I think I had this. Actually, I think I had an experience.
Really?
So, yeah, I've never talked about it.
Oh, did this jog your memory?
Yeah.
Okay.
And for me, I have a very bad memory.
You do?
Of my childhood. So I couldn't even tell you how old I was.
Okay.
And that's what I'm saying. Maybe this just happens to all kids. But I was in my bedroom, and then there's what we call the 4th bedroom. You remember it? You were there. And then there's that bathroom next to it.
Yes.
So I did one night see a shadow figure. Yeah. And it did have the hat. I swear on my life. And it was it looked like it was pointing a finger. I don't know if that was like kind of like almost like a gun. And it just went from the bathroom wall into the 4th bedroom. And I just remember being freaked out, like terrified.
Because I can picture what your house looked like. So the bathroom to where your TV was when I knew you? I'm just trying to figure this out.
Yeah, so I'm in my bed.
You're in your bed. Yeah.
You know how the door would open the hallway?
You had that the accordion door.
Accordion door.
Right.
But at that time, it would have been a regular door.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so the door was open. I was up with the bedroom door open.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the hallway.
Yeah.
And then there's the 4th bedroom, which is connected to my room. And then there's the bathroom. So I did see a shadow figure with a hat pointing a finger, which looked like a gun. I thought at the time it was a gun, maybe. And and that was it. It was like a split second, and it was gone. And I was like freaked out, and I just went to sleep.
Oh.
And then, and then the next day, I did go around the house, I recall, and I just checked to see was any windows open? Was there maybe like a bullet hole anywhere? Because I thought the
you
shadow
must have been a kid to think that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to be young. And that was the only time it ever happened, and I never spoke of it ever. I just thought it was something, something a kid sees, like
right.
Now I think of it like that, but
and you haven't thought about that till I told you what I saw, and then it jogged your memory?
I never really thought about it, yeah.
That's crazy.
But that did happen. But again, like in my logical mind, because I'm, red, I just felt, it's probably my mind playing a trick on me.
That's crazy because you never remember anything. Did you tell your parents?
No, never told a soul.
I wonder if your sister saw anything.
I could ask her.
You got to ask her.
But that is my question. Did everyone or almost everyone in their childhood see something like this?
Like you're saying, is it well, the people talking aren't children on the Miss Michaela Spiritual Family page. You're going to hear some of their stories, but I'll tell you, you could, yes, there's logical me where I'm like, oh, maybe it's just the way our brains work at a certain time of night and our eyes, and it's just some sort of phenomenon with our visual sensations as humans. Sure. Or are they portal creatures? You know what I mean? That can come in at certain times and can just kind of explore, or interdimensional creatures. Because every time I think about them, even though I don't like to, especially as a kid, they felt like they had the same identity. They had some sort of identity as a species or something, not as humans, not as a figment of my imagination. Because, man, I've had lots of those too, where you think you see something or that or whatever. These felt like they were being sneaky on purpose, and that they were observing or studying or wanting something from us, and getting people alone in order to get it. And I don't know what that is.
So the theories that it could possibly be alien being, supernatural, are possibilities.
When I said this before on here, I don't know about aliens. I think that there's something with interdimension connectivity that we don't understand. Like maybe in 10,000 years we'll get it. But there's something with beings that can cross dimensions.
Okay, now, and the other thing you said, you saw this at one home that you lived in. You lived in many homes as a child. You moved a lot.
Yeah, that's the only one I ever saw.
That was the only one?
Yes.
And you never saw it again since? No. I only, like myself, only had that one experience. I've never saw anything ever again.
Right.
But your sister still...
She sees them all to this day. Yes, yeah. But she sees a lot of stuff, but she's totally normal. She doesn't want to do any of this in her life so much, but...
It scares her.
Yeah, it's just not something... I don't know. I don't want to speak for her. I think it's just something she just doesn't participate in, But yeah. So I think some people might be able to see it a little better than other people. I closed myself off to it completely. So I don't want anything to do with it.
If you open yourself up to it, you saying there's a possibility you could see this again?
I feel like I'm so closed off. So like when I read you guys, a lot of people were really like, I used to see things as a kid, but I don't see anything more now. Which is a very common thing with children. Most children are open to seeing a lot more. Like a lot of kids are. Like the stories I hear myself about what kids see, I believe them. So a lot of us as kids were able to see things. And what happens is our human egos are like, that's freaking scary. We're shutting that down. So I feel like I was able to shut down like that. But that has helped me because when I know what it feels like, I'm very, like when you know what something feels like, not to do it or something. Like it's a sense of danger I pick up, or it's an intuition that I'm familiar with. So now with certain people, I avoid that. Like I can pick that up on people and situations. And because of that, it's a great tool that I use. Like if I feel like something feels like that, and honestly, it's evil or something that I don't want to deal with. It feels like portal stuff that I don't want to open myself up to. That's what it feels like.
All right.
We got to hear the MMSF stories.
If you want to, I'm leaning on that this is real.
Okay.
And I think the stories that they put out there.
Oh, my God.
Put it over the top.
Yeah. Wait till you hear these.
Yeah. We'll be right back.
Hormones are a word they get thrown a lot about, but let me get honest with you guys. Months ago, I was having the most intense mood swings, completely unpredictable. I mean, combined with the cramping, the bloating, the insomnia, everything you read about seemed to be happening at once to me, like an explosion of misery. Well, this next sponsor has made a legitimate huge difference in my life. This podcast is sponsored by MixHers. MixHers is a nutritional supplement that helps balance hormones. From your first period to your first hot flash, MixHers will be there with you every step of the way. MixHers created Her Time. That's what I take for women searching for PMS relief. It's the most enjoyable, effective, long-term solution on the market because the ingredients nourish the root cause of hormonal imbalance and eliminate the need for additional costly PMS aids. MixHers started back in 2019 when the CEO, Jess Toulson, had an unsuccessful search for postpartum period relief. After a ton of visits to the doctors and various medications, she turned to holistic health practitioner Cody Sanders, who created MixHers, first supplement to help balance hormones naturally. Today, the product is known as Her Time. Anyone that I talk to, this is what I talk to them about if when this comes up. First of all, MixHers tastes good. You just mix it in water. That's it. I do it once a day. I actually look forward to it. So it's not a difficult habit and it doesn't taste odd. And if you're not sure which MixHers drink is right for you, you can go take their quiz to ensure you get matched with products designed for your unique wellness goals. Join the thousands of women who have discovered feel-good freedom through balanced hormones. Head to mixhers.com/KYA and use promo code KYA for an additional 10% off your order. MixHers rarely gives discounts, so 10% is the best offer you'll find. Remember to use my promo code KYA for an additional 10% off. Hey, Scotty.
Hey, guys.
So we asked the Mystic Michaela spiritual family if they had any experiences with shadow people, not ghosts, shadow people. And anybody called a hat man.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest. I thought I was going to get like 2 or 3 comments. I thought maybe like 1 or 2, 3 people would chime in something. But no.
Yeah.
A lot of people, and I'm sure there's a lot more stories
I bet
that have not been put on there. You can continue to do that if you want.
Yes, please.
But all right, let's go.
So Megan R. writes, I'm sorry, what? With a hat? With a freaking hat? OMG. So this was like, kind of like me. I was like, this is a thing? I didn't know other people had this experience like that. And then she goes, you just solved a freaking 30-year-old mystery and now I'm flipping out. She says, I grew up in a raised ranch in a very old town in New York. If you know a raised ranch, the living room is typically on the top level and then there's a long hallway where the bedrooms are. My bedroom was the one right at the end. So when I opened my door, I could see a straight shot down the entire length of the house. And in the corner of the living room that was directly in front of my room on the opposite side of the house, I would swear there was sometimes in the middle of the night a large man shape who was just a shadow but had a bowler hat. And it scared the living daylights out of me. Thought it was my imagination whenever I'd go to the bathroom or the like, and never said anything. My family aren't exactly the ones to believe this type of thing, but it was to the point that I refused to sleep in the living room ever. And if I fell asleep downstairs, I wouldn't walk back upstairs until the morning unless I had to. So we got to believe ourselves. You know, that's not normal. That's not normal. I always kept to myself and never said anything. But then we had family over in my mid-20s and we were talking about the house. Started to tell the story about how I was terrified of this one corner of the house because I swore I always saw a and before I could even finish the word shadow, my older brother finished, doughy man in a bowler hat?
What?
We both just looked at each other completely stunned and were like, what the actual heck? In this house, my brother would get terrible nightmares and night terrors all the time and I would sleepwalk. Local lore was that they found some unmarked graves when they were building the neighborhood in the 70s, but I don't know. I know this sounds completely insane and totally made up, but I swear I have chills right now. How crazy is that?
Wow. Okay, what type of hat did you say?
She said bowler hat.
What's a bowler hat?
That's like those with the circles. It's like a circle hat.
Okay.
Like they would wear like Charlie Chaplin's hat.
So kind of like the fedora.
Kind of like a fedora. Yeah. So isn't that crazy? So her and her brother had the same experience.
And they both saw the hat.
Interesting with the unmarked graves thing.
Yeah.
I don't think these are people, but I do wonder if it's like portal stuff. Like cemeteries can be portals. All right. Especially like if they're blessed cemeteries or it's consecrated ground. It's like portal stuff. And a lot of people on this thread said that they would see in their peripheral vision, yes, but oftentimes in portal areas like doorways or walkways or hallways or things like that. So, I got chills.
Ooh, yeah. All right. So, that's freaky.
Yeah. So Erin G has another one. She says, let me preface this by saying the experience could have been sleep paralysis. All right, so here you go. She's like, like the rest of us, making the paranormal normal here, people. All right. However, I had a few, all very different experiences in this home. She gave a picture of the house on the thread. So I think it could go either way. I woke in the middle of the night to a large man shadow figure in my door frame. It took up the entire door frame. He started walking toward me and felt very angry. And like his intention was to do harm. I couldn't move or scream or wake my husband up, who was sleeping next to me. It stopped, disappeared, before the shadow man could get to me. I dreaded going to sleep for days, and I still think about it at night sometimes. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, there wasn't, I guess he wouldn't be here right now, but there was no story where the shadow man actually got them.
I didn't read that one yet.
No, I mean, they probably wouldn't be around, right?
Yeah.
They'd be
like who would get them.
Right.
So this one's crazy because this is from Amanda, and this is Purple Bomb Amanda, actually. And she's my friend, and I talked to her, and I totally forgot about this. This is kind of crazy. Well, I'll just read what she wrote. We had a ghost in the house I grew up in. We named him Jack, and I grew up completely terrified of my basement because that's just where he was always seen. I just assumed he was a ghost. Like she's told me that they've always had like an entity, like it was evil downstairs, and they didn't know what it was. It was the size of a child and a smoky, shadowy figure. It would dart behind things very quickly. So it would go from one of those support poles and then dart behind the bar. It was always seen in the basement and nowhere else in the house. I was completely terrified of my basement my entire life until we moved from that house when I was 18. I remember if I ever had to go down there to get something, I would turn all the lights on in the staircase, then race downstairs without looking at anything but my feet, grab whatever I needed, and run upstairs in the same insane fashion. I was terrified to see him. And, she didn't put this, but she told me this. She actually took the kids back, when you go years later, like, hey, let's go see where mom grew up. And the neighbors the people that lived there actually were outside. And he saw them looking, and he walked up to her and oh, hey, can we see the house? And he's like, sure. And she's like, and then she was like, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to say it. Have you had anything in the basement? And he was like, yeah, we don't like to talk about it, but there's something down there.
Oh my God.
And she just met them, so that was crazy. And she's got a gazillion stories more than that. So that was kind of crazy.
It also seems like the shadow people, they take a spot in the home, basement, the living room, the attic, your room, whatever.
Come to think of it, my sister shared that wall with the attic too. Like we were both against the same wall with a hallway in between, actually.
Yeah. That's
kind of crazy. So it's like that's where it felt like they were in that house.
Yeah. It seems like they stay in that spot.
Yeah, they were in a spot. So you wonder, like, what happened there? Is that like a portal? Is that like a point of entry? Because they feel like they have their own world, but it's just, I don't know.
And they keep coming back to that defining characteristic other than a ghost. It's this watching feeling, like they're looking at you. Is the real defining characteristic here.
Yeah. Yeah. They're observing or something.
Observing. Yeah.
Michaela C. writes, yes, all the time. The scariest did have a hat, and I kept seeing him in my periphery. I wanted to tell my husband after we left the TLF, which is a temp living facility on base, so a base situation in New Mexico, because this tall hat man freaked me out. I was shocked when he'd admitted he'd been seeing him too.
Oh.
When he got back to TLF that evening, we were laying in bed watching TV and briefly brought up the hat man again before turning out the light to go to bed. Not 2 minutes after we turned out the lights, there was a very loud bang coming from the inside of the closet, like someone having punched the hollow closet door next to us. We jumped up and my husband opened the closet and no one was there, and neither of our suitcases had fallen over. We were frightened after that, but eventually fell asleep, and she was so happy to leave the TLF for good the next day. So this is something that hat man, this is something, because these are, and the whole thread of this, like these are regular people, the MMSF, we're regular people and with these stories.
Yeah. So, okay, I don't think we can leave it here.
Yeah.
Because
super
now,
scary.
If you've stayed this long, you're probably terrified. I'm a little scared myself right now. I've got like some chills from you reading these stories.
Yeah.
So the big question I have now is, how in the world do we get rid of them?
My big thing is you have control over your space. Like there is nothing can be in your space without your permission. think these are a little harder to get rid of than your run-of-the-mill ghost or just dead person hanging out. Remember, ghosts and dead people, they're just chilling. They're not any problem. They're kind of like roommates.
I don't mind them. Like
they're fine.
When my like a lot of my deceased family showed up, was about a month or two ago.
Yeah.
And they were just hanging around. And then and then I was like, hey, are they still here? Like, nope, they're gone now.
Yeah.
But they were great.
It's fine.
They were great house guests.
Yeah.
They were amazing. I didn't want them to go.
Yeah, dead people just feel like people. And in all aspects, it can feel comforting. It can feel like roommates. It can feel a little bit like, okay, it's time to go home now. It can feel a little bit like that, but they feel like people.
Right.
These don't feel like people. Also, these things can, I think, be a little harder to get rid of. For me, what always has worked out is get out. And just my own personal thought is go to what works for you. For me, I kind of go back to the Catholic roots thing. So you're going to see me with the rosaries in the room and putting up my holy cards and spraying. Oh yeah, growing. Okay, sorry, this just came back to me. My parents, big on holy water. So they would just bless all the rooms. Many times. And that does work. If you believe it, that works, I believe. But saging, ringing a bell and opening windows and doors.
Okay.
That kind of clears space. White candles, saying only that of the light may exist here. And also remembering to ensure your own boundaries. Like if you're having moments where you're seeing this stuff, think, okay, what's going on in my life right now? Because they do, I feel, feed off vulnerabilities when you're energetically weakened. So what can you do to make yourself stronger? Do you need to meditate more? Do you need to make sure you're taking care of your health? Do you need to say no to some things in life? What can you do to make yourself feel stronger energetically? Because then they can't get to you as easily.
Okay. And these are, you're not cursed here. This is not a curse. And you don't need anyone to come in and help you. This is not a Carol Ann situation.
Oh my God, no.
Carol Ann,
oh my God,
poltergeist.
The Exorcist. Yeah.
Right. So you don't have to pay anyone to do this.
Right, no.
Don't feel you have to go out and hire somebody. This is all done by you.
Honestly, I feel like this is me and what I think. And usually we don't talk like this on here.
Right.
That's the thing.
Right,
if you've been following the podcast, it's very positive and open and dead people are great, which they are. And so this is like a little
different.
This is a different episode than what we normally do,
right.
But denial of this stuff it's something that can contribute to it. So you can say, I know that's real, but I also choose not to embrace it or have it around. But you have to make that choice. Fear is a great thing that people can, or energies, any energy can feed off of. So fight it in yourself and take your power back. Yeah, freaky. Sorry, everybody. Good luck sleeping tonight. Have fun with that. Me too, by the way. I don't like talking about this stuff because it creeps me out.
Invites it in, right? The more you talk about it.
When I was thinking about this episode, is sometimes I do before I go to sleep at night. I'm like, what episode? What am I going to talk about in the episode this week? It's like before I go to sleep, of course. And I'm like, I started thinking about this, and I'm laying in bed. And you fall asleep in 3 seconds. And I'm thinking about it. And then I start getting I start remembering stuff from when I was a kid. I'm like, oh, and I start getting kind of scared, meh. And then the alarm in our house goes off for literally no reason. And I'm like, Scott! Yeah. I woke you up. And I'm like, I was thinking of scary things. And I feel like it knows I'm thinking about it. And you're like, oh, it's fine. Then you just go back to sleep. And then I had to watch Bridgerton for 4 hours just to go to bed.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah. Sorry, guys. Well, this podcast is for you and about you. And we're so glad you spent some time with us today.